Oh man, Earl freaking dropped a new album, some rap songs. Aren't you excited?
But he already dropped some rap songs.
No, it's not called like the project is called some rap songs.
Just some rap songs. Like there's a certain amount, right?
Yes, I understand that there will be an amount of rap songs, but that is literally what it's called. It's called some rap songs.
Yeah. So there's some rap songs on here, correct?
Just listen to the album. That's what I'm about to do, which means I'm going to be tuning you out. So I'm trying to just listen to it, okay? Just you don't even gotta no. Earl has finally dropped some rap songs, much awaited album, much awaited project, much awaited music, new music. A whole actual album from Earl has been something that all of his fans have been breathlessly waiting for, and though there have been some twists and turns, it's finally actually here. We got it on November 30th. It's compiled of 15 songs, and it's not that long. It's actually only 25 minutes. Now, the longest song on here is actually 2 minutes, and most of the other songs average out about around a minute. So, with that being said, it's important first to look at the narrative that's going to be surrounding this project, specifically the concept. While on I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, Earl was crawling through the sludge of depression, drug addiction, and darkness. Some rap songs seem to exist as an antithesis to that behavior. Instead, Earl electing to find himself, find his inner peace, and with that comes the concept of brevity, which he highly focuses on, especially in this album, and he talks about in a Vulture interview. It was really cool to see him basically kind of explain his mindset of creating this album, and the concept is very clearly executed here, with a lot of these songs, like I stated before, not really reaching that long of a distance. Instead, most are 1 minute, and the longest is 2 minutes 29 seconds to be exact. It's kind of crazy to think that someone who is such a lyrical rapper wouldn't want to have long songs going into these incredible details, but instead we get the opposite, where Earl is attacking, but he's doing it in a manner that is concise, calculated, and cohesive. That way you have a album that feels very fast, but you have to give it multiple listens in order to really get an appreciation for the story he's trying to tell and the journey that he's going through. By summarizing his journey in these pieces, it becomes way more clear instead of it just feeling like we're having to get through certain aspects of it. A lot of these songs have a particular narrative that involve his journey, and that is something I can appreciate for sure. With the concept being explained to us and understood, how does it sound? Earl explained in a Vulture interview that the beats on here would be loops, as it allows for Earl to tell a story. He feels as though when you have to deal with a loop, you have to come up with a narrative and craft a narrative that is properly formulated to that loop, instead of dynamic instrumentation sort of giving you an escape, which kind of sounds kind of cool in a way. He's saying that simplifying and, again, embracing that concept of brevity really allows you to bring about more complex things. When you have to pack it down and when you have to make something more concise, you of course will find that you'll discover ways to make that more concise without necessarily cutting corners, but still applying a lot of skill to that. And that's why it's so impressive that a lot of these songs are 1 minute, 1 minute 30 seconds. Again, the max song was like 2:21. Now the main vibe, the main story behind these beats seems to be a weary hope that is slowly burgeoning through. Even though there are a lot of trials and tribulations that Earl goes through, and we get to hear about that on this album, it's important to note that Earl is still working on finding himself even now. Even though this is just one leg in the journey, it's still a part of the journey, and we're getting to hear that. We're getting to hear Earl struggle, but we're also hearing Earl make it through and not necessarily just be trapped by the vices, because vices have the scent of lust, and when you get stuck in that, you'll never be able to get out unless you really have the determination to do so, which Earl portrays here. Now, little cool details that I caught were something like the wind in December 24th whooshing by, and then on Shattered Dreams, the intro track has the burst of bubbles coming to the surface. It's almost like Earl is in this hazy state trying to wake up, and that's seemingly him coming to the surface. He's not drowning anymore. He's not getting trapped, like I said, by the vices. There's also the transitions that come and go in these ones where you'll be hearing like the end of a song, like On the Way, and the vocal sample that starts off in the mint it almost starts towards the end of On the Way, and it just sneaks in there, and next thing you know, you're in the mint. Like, these transitions and sequences are really well placed. It's not like insanely smooth to the degree of like Brockhampton and Iridescence, where you literally don't know that you've switched to a new song. The beats change enough here that you can tell, but Brockhampton's Iridescence, probably as far as albums that I've listened to this year, had the smoothest transitions. Regardless, the transitions and sequencing on some rap songs is really done well, and I enjoy that because it does add to that aesthetic, that motif that Earl is trying to go for. Now, I think as well as the aesthetic and motif, what people may not like is the fact that it's kind of lo-fi and Earl's voice doesn't seem to be completely there in some of these tracks, but I think that is supposed to contribute to the fact, like I said, that he's got a weary hope. This hope has been whittled down and broken a few times, but Earl is still continuing to try to find himself instead of getting sucked into the darkness again, and that's the most important thing. You're not going to always have this optimism leaking out in a happy-go-lucky manner. Not everyone has the ability to do that, and Earl's positivity is not going to reflect in the same way that a Chance the Rapper's might, or a Gambino's might. It reflects in his own way, and that's the most important thing, that Earl sticks to himself, and he is here. So I would say that for this album too, not only is it sonically sound, the most powerful sound I almost forgot to mention was in Playing Possum, when his mother and his father are both featured over this beat. And it's kind of cool because it's this intertwining of two worlds that Earl himself was birthed from, and Earl is showing his appreciation for the both of them. Hearing his father is almost kind of ethereal. That entire segmentation of that music in that little space with them talking back and forth almost, and kind of working in tandem, there's just something gut-wrenching about it. Not only because Earl lost his father before, apparently he planned to show his father the album, show him, like, I sampled you, I put you on here, whatever you want to do after that is fine, but it's just, there's something intimately powerful about Playing Possum. I love the sound on this project. I love everything that it provides, and I love everything that it kind of shows me. This is really well done as far as sound goes. It's sonically sound. Two more things that I did not mention in sonically sound and I really wanted to talk about, but I just memory bad. Peanut is distorted, glitchy, and almost terrifying in how it's illustrating the anguish of Tebe the man. We're not even talking about the rapper, but Tebe the man. And that is narrated basically by Earl Sweatshirt the rapper. His heartbreak, his anguish, his grief, and his shock at basically being robbed of the opportunity to start a potential relationship with his father. That was one of the other things that I really, really liked. And I don't want to say that Peanut is a favorite song because it's really hard to listen to emotionally, but he just captures that feeling to a T. And then Riot coming after it. The closer of Riot seems to be a wave goodbye from Earl. He's saying goodbye to this chapter in his life and moving on. It has this really funky, wistful, charming style to it that, you know, shows the strength that Earl is maintaining. A brief insight into that inner peace that he's still getting, and I think Riot is, ironically with the title being named it, is that peace that he's starting to find. Because if he ended some rap songs on Peanut, then you can throw the theory away. You can throw my entire theory on the concept away. But with Riot, it seems like he's like starting to accept the losses that he's had, the mistakes that he might have made, all the different things in his life that may have haunted him at one point, and all the different vices that bother him. He's accepting that and moving on. It's just something I wanted to say about it being sonically sound, and I forgot to say those words, so I'm putting them here. This will probably be the time that this segment is the hardest for me because Earl is obviously one of my favorite rappers. This album is really enjoyable. I just talked about how all the music comes together and has many different details that make up the overall story he's trying to tell. And now I have to somehow tell you that I love specific amounts of songs out of these. Yes, it's time for my favorite songs on some rap songs. and it was really difficult. I like all of them. I'm going to spoil it and say, like, I like all of them on here. If I had to say my favorites, we have Nowhere to Go, the meditative state in which Earl finds himself recounting things, and specifically the one line that was pretty imposing was the one about how only thing on his mind was death. That would seem really sad and really depressing and not at all hopeful, but the reason that I think it is because at the time, that is the way that he states, is that at the time the only thing on his mind was death, but he made it through that because he's not dead and he's still here and he's still working at getting past those feelings. Like I said before in a Sashimi Thoughts, I believe, or the Crystal Ball Corner, Nowhere to Go seems to represent being trapped and forcing yourself to adapt, essentially responding to that entrapment by saying, okay, I'm stuck in this emotion, I'm stuck in these feelings, let me find out what is up with myself, let me find myself. And in finding yourself, basically, when you have no choice but to, you come out the other side potentially with some hope and some clarity and some understanding that you can make it through this. December 24th, which is also Christmas Eve, if you celebrate Christmas. It features a way more fierce Earl. He's whisking away his detractors, accepting the fact that he's made mistakes, understanding that those mistakes helped him grow. The futile battle of time against his life, even how Bad Acid gave him a mental trip. This is all part of the journey again. It's just Earl spitting bars about everything in life. It's almost like an existential crisis, but it's spawned by Bad Acid. You know, Bad Acid did damage to my mental. Those things all contribute, the bad things and the good things, and sometimes we get so enveloped in one or the other. We usually will say, oh, everything has to be good and shiny, but the problem is that all that glitters is not gold, and sometimes you have to deal with some silverfish in order to get past that. On the Way is actually one of my favorites. Okay, I know I said that I like everything on here, but On the Way just has like this energy that Earl he's literally on his way. Like, he's out, he's getting out the door, he's got his car in the keys. He's got his keys in the car, and he's about to drive over the way there. What makes On the Way cool, other than the sheer vibe that it kind of emanates, is the wordplay and flow is just crazy. And I don't mean like in a JID explosively flashy style, but here Earl takes, like, it sounds like he's having a casual conversation. He's flipping like, no games with this cash, go play with yourself, we stay on your ass, just sense of safety melt in a flash, bang. And that's a double entendre just sitting there. The way that he states it makes it almost sound like it's two situations, and he's illustrating the potential of both. And it's just, that was just so cool. And then On the Way also has not necessarily a beat switch. Everything just kind of slows down. It's not jarring. It's not like, oh, wait, it's about to switch. But it's more like, like it just calms down and it relaxes. And then it transitions into the next song. And I'm just like, my God. So really, Earl was only really rapping for about 40 seconds there. He's packing everything tightly with concise lyrics. So it's not as though you're missing anything. He doesn't want to overstay his welcome, and he continues to do that throughout the album, and I really appreciate it. The Mint, another one of which kind of cheating because it's a single that already came out. The Mint essentially is like daybreak. Like, this is like you're waking up on a winter morning, probably getting ready for the day. On winter mornings, not everyone's excited to get up for the day. You're not necessarily excited. You're kind of just like, okay, it's gonna be cold outside, I gotta be ready for this. But you're also embracing the morning and still happy to have that morning, because there's still good things that can happen within that morning despite it being cold. And just because the season might grip you in a very, very chilling manner does not mean that you can't enjoy it. And the way that Earl and Navy Blue both narrate different aspects of their lives that they're struggling through, but also getting through, is what makes this track very important. It's similar to the printing press in how they make mints. This is kind of a mechanic thing. a mechanical thing, excuse me, where they're going through the motions, but instead of being completely swept up in them, they're responding to these motions by working as hard as they can not to be overtaken by feelings of sadness or darkness. Understanding that though they may feel sad now, they will not continue to feel sad and they'll continue working at it. They're like a printing press, a mint, if you will. Favorite songs, done. Now the big kahuna, favorite lyrics. Oh my god. It's the most difficult segment. The only reason it's the most difficult is because it's Earl. When it comes to Earl, he's gonna have just every single freaking song on here has a lot of depth to it. It makes me mad because like there's legitimately no throwaways to me. That being said, my favorite lyrics. We got say goodbye to my openness, total eclipse of my shine that I've grown to miss with holding shit in. Open my lids, my eyes said my soul is amiss. Here it looks like Earl has come to a crossroads, realized that he's going to have to make a decision. Things are going to come to a head regardless of what he does, so he might as well take control of the situation and figure out what he wants to do. The cool thing about it is Earl has talked before about how the significance of the eyes is something that has an impact in his daily life, because he can see through people's eyes their intent, their actual true selves. And that is true to an extent where you can read someone's eyes and usually it will tell you exactly what you might need to know about a person. And Earl especially focuses on that and has talked about that ad nauseum before. With that being said, his own eyes telling him that his literal soul is not doing well showed him that he has to figure things out and he has to get out of that structure of whatever he was doing prior that put him in this state, that put him in this bad way. We have on Shattered Dreams. Why ain't nobody tell me I was bleeding? Please nobody pitch me out this dream. I said peace to my dirty water drinkings. Nobody's trying to get it clean. Why ain't nobody tell me I was sinking? Nobody tell me I could leave. This one has a more esoteric approach, and I mean that in the fact that when he's daydreaming, his dream almost seems to be real. It seems as though he was trying desperately almost to get out, but he didn't understand that it was his control, and so it feels almost crazy to him that this whole time he had to just be an individual. He had to pull himself out of that, and that can relate to a lot of people who struggle with things that they feel as though the universe is at fault, or oh, it's just bad luck, or oh, this deity is causing all of my struggles, and if they just stop, then my life will be perfect. But that's not always the case. Now, there's always certain things that people just can't control, which is true for everything. You can't control literally everything in your life. There are just some things that will happen and you'll just have to be like, well, okay, let's drink some water, feel better, eat some vegetables, and take care of ourselves so that way we can handle this stress that's come our way. It's kind of Earl saying that, sharing that sentiment. And I think that a lot of people deal with that, and the best way to respond is if you are able to, because I know it's easy to say things. It's very easy to make statements and have them be seen as concrete theories, but the action is way more difficult. But if you are able, try to not necessarily blame the world for every single problem and try to work to improve yourself as best you can within the limits of reality. Because unfortunately, the only way you can escape reality is through means that will only make you feel good for a temporary amount of time. If you want some real improvement, you have to work on yourself without needing to get rid of your soberness. However, I'm not also disparaging anyone who does have those extracurriculars. There's nothing wrong with participating in those. It's just that you just got to be careful about it. That's all I'm saying. Cold summers don't tussle with strangers. Some of those keep one in the chamber. 3 spliffs had my wingtips clipped. I was stuck in the hang. A nigga muffled my pain and muzzled my brain up. I literally just was talking about this, so let's just repeat. Drugs are not bad, but when you try to use them to dodge emotions or beat down, also dodge emotions, if you want to get a quick reference, Inside on I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, he talks about how he dodges the emotions, and then in Cold Summers, which is feels like, I mean, it basically is a sequel. He's not dodging those emotions anymore, and he realized that this stuff is only keeping the pain down for so long. The pain will return. He has to find that inner peace and find a way to not muffle it, and also accept that it can return. Nothing ever can truly die when it comes to emotions. There are just certain ways to mitigate those pains, and especially when you suffer from a mental illness such as depression, that makes it even 10 times harder to get the energy to even want to do these things. So then it's a really difficult cycle. It's a really difficult journey, and that's what makes some rap songs so elucidating as well. Niggas know we keep the gases inside the spliff roll. The wind gets the ashes in the end, bro. Earl, existentialism, put them together in a room, let them have a lyrical baby. This is what you get. It's just a cool line basically saying, like, look, no matter what happens, we're gonna die. So you might as well chin up and not be a sucker or be fake or be detrimental to other people and yourself. I think it's perfectly fine. And he's asking for it on December 24th. From Earl. Like, he's asking for it on Christmas Eve. I don't even like Christmas, I understand. Like, Christmas Eve is like, hey man, we're about to freaking get some presents up in this joint. You better take these presents. I would personally would just be like cool with that. Badass, it did damage to my mental. Sure, you right, it took some passages to get grown. Confirming the fact that, yeah, you have to go through some certain tribulations in order to grow as a human being, and it's very difficult. It's also relatable. Earl's able to take the pain and frustration and anguish and things that he's dealing with in his journey and wrap them up in a lyrical ball, and then we hear it, and it's relatable to people that struggle with that. It's relatable because when you were younger, you probably heard, oh, you won't understand until you're grown. And that was probably the most annoying statement because everyone constantly was saying that, and you just wanted someone for once to just like give you a straight answer because you thought that's what would work. But it's similar to this book by Franz Kafka that was unfinished. It's called The Castle, and in it, the character K is actually trying to get to this mysterious castle, but he never gets any straight answers from anyone. Similar to this, where you don't get a straight answer how life is supposed to go, other than you have an idea, you have a concept, but no one's gonna tell you like, yeah, you're gonna have to like have something really, you're gonna have to deal with losing money or something. You're gonna have to deal with a strenuous situation in order to put some hair on your chest, give you some character. There are different situations for everybody, and hopefully no one has to go through like abuse or something like that, because that is something you don't have to go through. But there's just certain times where you just will be stressed and you have to respond to it, and you have to use that to grow as a human being. Mama say don't play with them scabs. It's safe to say I see the reason I'm bleeding out. I need you now. Closed lips make the mouth breathers frown. This one talking about basically another lesson from his mother that he attained, and this is something that I'm sure our parents have told us. Can't focus on the past. I'm sure friends have even told us this too. You can't focus on the past. You can't focus on what hurt you before, because when you get stuck in that, you'll never be able to appreciate the future things or look into the future with hope, because you will be so riddled with paranoia and insecurity that that future may just be more of the same, and then you get stuck in a bubble of darkness, and you don't want to go there. You don't want to be stuck inside forever. You got to go outside at some point. The wealth be the labor's fruit, the loophole dug the belt, G's fell all praises to the juice unattainable like Tang in the booth. Basically, this is Earl talking about class structure and how the owners of an occupation, business, company get to see an unimaginable amount of money. Think like Amazon with Jeff Bezos, and the fact of the struggle of Amazon workers to get even a fair wage, stuff like that. You know, you feel all praises to the juice, that talking about the imagination of people when they imagine getting money and being rich or something like that, or succeeding and getting higher up in the corporate structure. You think about this thing that just is almost unattainable when you're working at the rate that you're working. It's unattainable. It's the juice that like you can't get, and it's only these certain people who are super duper unimaginative, like insanely wealthy, that will ever even have that kind of blink. They basically have what, I forgot who called it this, but fuck you money. That's the funniest way to like describe it, but it makes the most sense. As fuck you money is basically money that is money you could buy whatever just because you don't care. Like you could go and buy a TV that's like $500, which for someone else would be an unimaginable purchase, which would take years of planning, but for you is like, oh, you know, I can buy it. Money makes the world go round. unfortunately, it also can make the world go boom. It is a torture for a lot of people who are not in that very, 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 very tiny tier of rich people. Quicksand, scrambling out of that, go behind the back, switch hands. Earl on here is basically talking about how he was getting out of his darker side, is the darkness that was trying to swallow him whole. The way that he describes it is basketball. In a basketball move, you know, you go behind the back to avoid the defender trying to steal the ball from you, or you switch hands when you're about to go up for a layup or a dunk, so that way they can't block you. You do all these certain movements and make these counters and these strategies in order to not get emotionally bogged down in the same way that a basketball player is doing all those moves to score, to succeed. At the end of the day, we're all trying to succeed. We're trying to score. We're not trying to be blocked or get the ball stolen from us. And I'm pretty certain that there are a lot of other counter moves in other sports as well. We get to see the way that Earl and Navy Blue both dodge these things. Navy Blue working for his family and trying to, you know, do that until he's dust, basically enjoying his craft and bringing happiness to the people around him. Earl finding solace in showering and finding peace within himself and discovering what makes him tick, finding these certain aspects of themselves to allow themselves to prosper, which is really important. A lot of blood to let, peace to make, give a fuck about a check. He's talking about he's got a lot of life to live, and the monetary gains are temporary. They're not something that he can have tangibly forever. And there's a certain fulfillment that comes from getting certain emotional responses, from certain emotional bonds from people that you have to actually forge, versus money, which can only buy you happiness for so long. Because eventually, when you run out of money, and you run out of friends because all those friends are made out of money, it's a sad time. So, to avoid that, you want to make peace. Earl is also not only talking about how he's not worried about money, but he wants to make peace with himself and then be able to make peace with others that he may have beef with or feuded with. Here, Earl is basically talking about not focusing on the monetary, focusing on the emotional and what is not necessarily always tangible, but much more fulfilling. And I think that encapsulates the entire journey of some rap songs. He's trying to find that thing, that peace, and that peace is going to be found within himself. And first, to get to others, you have to be comfortable completely with yourself in order to really strike a chord in others. The biggest thing about some rap songs is finding that thing, and it's incredibly difficult. This journey is harrowing, and the mint, the way that it sounds like light daybreak, like starting to come to those realizations, starting to address those situations, starting to actually make those actions in order to do so. And I think that that really is a wonderful thing. And I think if Earl says fuck a check, I'm with him, except for the part where I need to not be broke. I pissed problems out the bottle. My mom used to say she saw my father in me. I was not offended. This line is probably a more striking one for people who have seen Earl grow, especially because one of his more popular songs, probably still to date, is Cheung, released in 2013. One of the biggest factors of Cheung being his hit was the fact that in it, not only was this Earl returning, but he talks about his father. It's been 5 years since my father left and left me fatherless. I used to say I hate him in dishonest jest, but honestly, I miss this nigga like when I was 6. Every time I had the chance to say it, I would swallow it. Now he's basically illustrating his evolution of kind of his thoughts on his father from when he was a angst-riddled, frustrated, angry teen who went through some trials and tribulations, getting sent to the Samoa boarding school, all the stuff that happened with his mom, all these different stresses that happened, and now at this point, his perspective of his father finally changing. It can be relatable, but obviously depending on your situation with your parents, it may not be. But for those whose parents are simply just flawed human beings and not necessarily evil dictators that are trying to hurt you emotionally and physically, then this line makes sense. It's just a bit of an evolution for Earl. Not only do you see this grown Earl being like, you know what, my father did what he did, and while I didn't agree with all of the stuff and I wasn't happy with all the stuff, I still cared for him. And this is that care starting to come out. Him being able to take that comparison and be like, you know what, that's really cool. Not only because his father obviously is a really good poet, but because his father is his father. And it just is another detail showing Earl's growth and his change from that young kid. I mean, he's a grown man now. He's a grown man. You can't tell him what to do. Couldn't tell him what to do anyway. Those are all my favorite lyrics on some rap songs. What is some rap songs? If not a collection of a man going through a journey of loss, angst, and frustration and anger, and coming out the other side with a hope and optimism and a confidence that things can get better, that things can be better than what they are. This album not only is able so well to craft these situations, or at least recount these situations in a narrative with the looping beats, the way that just looping beats kind of represents that quicksand that we all get stuck in at times, where we feel like we can't make a decision, we can't break through this cycle, we're just stuck in this monotony forever. And then we start to come to this realization. And I think the coolest thing about Earl's realization is that it's probably the most ingrained in reality. Although I know there are some distortions and some glitches and this kind of dreamy feel sometimes on here, what makes it real is that it's so gradual. There's not this snap epiphany where suddenly everything is happy-go-lucky. Instead, we go through it, and at the end of the last song is completely broken and like distorted and hurt. And then you get the end with Riot that takes all that pain, flips it into acceptance. It's like going through the, I want to say 7 stages of grief. Is it 7 stages? I can't remember, but one of the biggest ones is acceptance. Some rap songs takes us through this narrative that gets us to that end path and shows us that it's possible. It's certainly possible. And you already, like I said, you see glimpses of it throughout the tracks. They're littered in there of Earl finding himself, of getting better, of not sitting and accepting the vices that might try to entice him with temporary pleasures. Here, you get an Earl who's slowly but surely coming outside. And I think that that can be incredibly relatable for everyone who's ever struggled with anything. Because we see the people with the highlights, especially with social media now, you see highlights of like everyone doing well. You see all of the good things. You never see them at home crying because somebody said something mean to them at work, or you don't see somebody messing up a take 17 times and that 18th take it finally works. You don't see somebody rewriting an essay for the 7th time, hoping to God that the professor will finally see that they understand and they've rewritten it, and finally achieving these things. They're all gradual. They're not magical. They're not magical, at least in the sense of like the speed, but they're magical once you finally achieve that. And I think Earl is explaining to us that with time and with patience, anything that you're struggling through may potentially be overcome. Obviously, depending on what it is, it may need a quick solution. It may need a swift one. But depending on what you're struggling with, it's a gradual work. It's a gradual effort that allows you to finally get past that thing. And it won't come as fast as you think it will. It might take months, years, freaking millennia, but it's still possible. So I think Some Rap Songs is a wonderful album. It's very, very good. I recommend it to anyone, even if you're not struggling, even if you have all the crap in your life figured out. This can help you remember how you got there, how you started to self-affirm instead of self-hate, how you started to fold the clothes right after they got out of the laundry, how you wash the dishes. All these little things, they build up over time. Some rap songs. I'm happy to have lyrical giant of our generation, your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, back. Like Earl Sweatshirt. We missed you. I know that I missed Earl, and I just love the fact that we get to see him evolve as a human being and just him thriving and hopefully being able to overcome all of the demons that might be weighing him down. Just seeing the overwhelming support for some rap songs is super dope. Like, I'm just happy for him as a person. Like, Earl is one of my favorite artists, and I'm just so happy to be seeing the reception that this is getting, even if there are some mixed reviews and not everyone's gonna like it because the aesthetic of it might not appeal to everyone, and that's fine. But just the sheer lesson behind some rap songs, it's just, I love it. And Earl's great, and thank you for bringing us some rap songs. Obviously someone is gonna now be like, can I get some more? And I'll say, I mean, if he'll give it to us, but just can we enjoy this? It's 15 songs. If you don't count Playing Possum, then it's 14. Still a lot of music. 25 minutes. Earl Sweatshirt, some rap songs. Freaking amazing. Well, this guy says, everything always will take time, and no matter how hard you stare at the clock, no matter how much you scream and yell at the minutes, they're gonna tick by. So make sure you're doing everything you can to enjoy your life. Praise be to the Most High. It was that's in the album. It's in the song. I just can't remember. I didn't even say it right. So, you know,